great crowd here, I must admit. There's 180 odd people that have attended, so you've got to be applauded for just showing up and coming in and finding out a bit more about nutrition, so thank you for that. Following on from Manny, I've got the hard job of trying to pull it all together after following such an amazing presentation, so I hope I can deliver that quite well for you all. I'm a little bit interactive as well, so I might ask questions, so if you give me a blank face, I'll just keep going, but if I just throw things out there, do respond. The main thing that I want to talk about, and I've been invited by Karen and the girls that have put this show together, is to talk about healthy eating and diabetes and how to apply the diabetes and lifestyle plan. Just want to point out firstly, the diet and lifestyle plan is a moderate carbohydrate, a little bit different to what Manny was talking about earlier. What our next plan is and what we're researching now is the next step down from that, so there'll be more to come later. I have broken it into two, so I've got to talk about the diabetes and lifestyle plan, and then I'll go and talk about the power of mushrooms and the role of mushrooms in health. Okay. First of all, I'm just going to make it quite clear. We probably already know that diets don't work. Our role, I heard a yes. Anybody seconding that one? Diets don't work, and what we do at research in CSIRO is develop the diets to try and put them through an intervention plan so we can develop the lifestyle patterns. So I'm not here to tell you about the hard and fast rules that we should follow, because they can be all quite confusing when you're trying to adapt it to your normal lifestyle. What I want to get through today really is what the plan is about, how you can adapt that into your day-to-day living, the core foods, as Manny's pointed out, that the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating, the core foods still exist in there, and there's probably not much more than you already know. So it's just putting it together with what our research does tell you. So why are we focusing on diabetes? I think Manny summarised that quite nicely. It's an epidemic. We know there's a high incidence of diabetes in Australia, if not worldwide. And it is one of the challenges, trying to work out a diet plan that suits the population level. So our next step will be, as Manny said, going into the community and making sure what we can do and what we see within our clinical research unit, how that translates to the community so it gets a better education and better support for you guys out there. Diabetes is associated with cardiovascular risk and poorer quality of life outcomes, and I'm sure that's why you're all here and you're engaging with the Diabetes SA team as well in all their amazing services that they provide. However, what brings us to the forefront of this as a CSIRO team is really the clinical practice guidelines for dietary management still remain a bit controversial, and that's where we hope to make a bit of a difference and get some clarification around that we can all understand. I think one thing... Yes.
Close to the microphone, please.
Am I not? I'm normally pretty loud too, so how's that? Is it? Is that better? And can you all see as well? Beautiful. Now I've lost my train of thought. I'll get back. The CSIRO Baker, we did this in collaboration with the Baker IDI. Who's familiar with this book? No. So I might be converting some people. That's all right. The CSIRO Baker and Baker IDI lifestyle plan was developed out of the extensive research that Manny had talked about over the life of CSIRO trials. But it's been, I guess, developed in a way that we hope to motivate and assist diabetics to make some of these positive changes that we know work within the clinical setting. We also want to provide practical and easy to understand information. So the book isn't just about meal plans or about diet, it's also about medications and exercise, and it gives you some insight about what we've done and what we find works. The contents really look at living with diabetes, menu plans and recipes in a nutshell, but that first part, living with diabetes, is such an extensive area that it's well worth the read. My focus today is going to be on the meal plans. I can't go into detail too much because I've only got a short period of time, and I will talk fast to try and get through as much as I can. But I really do want to just talk about the meal plans and how we can try and implement them into your daily life and see how they work. From the background, because sometimes, when we're looking at the research that Manny was talking about, our job down in translation is to really make sure that what we know works in science can actually be adapted into the real world. So what we did, not only look at the research, but we looked at, other pathways, so the guidelines internationally, what the guidelines for diabetics were. And this is what we found. This is only a snapshot of a few. The United States, the Australian and the New Zealand guidelines. Don't expect you to read these, and if you can't read them, the presentations will be online, and I believe the videotaping as well, so just turn and wave, that'd be great. But what we did find is that, you know, you can see by this table that there's no clear consensus of what we should be doing. They are quite variable, the guidelines internationally. So it just raised to the point that, you know, as CSIRO, when we're developing this book, we had to come up with a bit of a template based on our expert knowledge and what we found within the research. We collaborated with Baker IDI. We have our own science experts such as Manny and Grant Brinkworth. So that's where our focus has come through the research that we do today. So what did we come up with? Now, these are all figures and numbers, and I am a bit of a data nerd, so I apologise for some of those tables slipping in. But the dietary pattern that we came up with was such as we're looking at about 25% of protein. So it's higher protein, but it's not that high protein as you would become familiar with, such as Atkins and so forth. Even the total wellbeing diet works on around about 30% protein. So we're still a bit higher. The carbohydrate, we're looking at 40 to 45%, and as Manny talked about, the importance of low GI. So we want most of those carbohydrate-based foods to be lower in GI. We also looked at the total fat. We're wanting up to around about 35%, but the key part about the types of fats in your diet we wanted to focus on is the monounsaturated fats. So the eggs and those areas that are coming in, the olive oils. I won't talk too much about sodium, but we did say limit as a generic rule. There's not a lot of clear evidence of where we're going to go with sodium at the moment, but there are some guidelines that we did follow. With fibre and alcohol, we followed the Australian NHMRC recommendations for 25 to 30 grams of fibre and 2 standard drinks of alcohol for males and females with at least 1 to 2 alcohol-free days. So you do get the whole concept of core foods and indulgences within there that are allowable as well. So all the numbers, can you see that okay? Probably no. I like that. That means I've got to talk a bit more, doesn't it? What this is was called your daily core food allowance. So out of the numbers that we generated behind the scenes, looking at the guidelines and then coming up with our own dietary pattern, we then have to put those numbers into whole foods so you can understand what we mean. So we came up with what the core food allowance would be. Now, core food groups, and I'll label them because you can't see them, it's the low GI, high fibre breads and cereal group. That contains obviously breads and cereals, but also contains your potato, it contains your legumes, it contains your rice, pasta, and those components of foods as well, and crisp breads. What you can't see there quite clearly is that they give you a volume that you can have that equals that 15 grams of carbohydrate and equals 1 unit. So what CSIRO do with their history of the books is we followed pattern and followed prescription of food units into a meal plan, and that's probably where it gets a little bit tricky to explain, so bear with me with that one. The second one is your lean protein foods. Those consist of, again, your lean protein meats, fish, chicken, but it does encompass your eggs and your tofu and your vegetarian options as well. And again, they're an assigned portion that are assigned to a unit. So, for example, 100 grams of raw weight meat, fish or chicken is equal to 1 unit of your lean meats and protein foods within this diet plan that we'll get to in a moment. Going on to number 3, we recommend the low-fat dairy. The low-fat dairy obviously is your low-fat milk, your low-fat reduced fat yogurts, also your cheese, but we did include things such as your full-fat cheese and your low-fat cheese, and you can see the differences in energy for those, so we did reduce the volumes in that area as well to accommodate that fats. With fruit, and I heard a bit of a question earlier about fruit, we do incorporate fruit. The biggest thing about what to eat and how to eat is how much of it do you eat. So when we're following the prescribed plans, we do ask to go back to just calibrate your eyes to the portions once or twice and then get an understanding of what those portions are, because 9 times out of 10 you're probably doing most of it already. It's just maybe tweaking of what's around the edges. So the fruit really account for about 2 serves of fruit a day, and basically 150 grams of fresh fruit. So we just go, what's better, bananas or apples? Leave all that at the door and go, it's 150 grams of fresh fruit. It's 150 mils of unsweetened fruit juice or 30 grams of dried fruit. And just keep a generic keep it simple, basically, is what we're trying to, the key message we're trying to get across. With the vegetables, we want you to have at least 5 serves of vegetables a day. Now, that's no different to the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating, which is 5 serves of vegetables a day as well. And these are your non-starch vegetables. As you noticed before, we put the starch vegetables, such as your potato, sweet potato, into your breads and cereal group. So basically, these form what we call the free list foods. And I'll get to that again because that will lead into the mushroom talk. Number 6, we've got your fats, nuts, seeds and oils. We put in there nuts, seeds and oils to make it a little bit more explicit because that's where a lot of the monounsaturated fats come from. A lot of people will mistakenly put nuts as a protein source, but really they're a good component of your monounsaturated fats and a good part of your diet as well. So that forms the core food groups. If you ever come across the book, it does give you an option. Option 1 being a higher protein diet option, which is what I'm going to talk about today. And then you have a moderate protein option as well, which is either option 2. To give you a difference, a bit of an idea there, basically when you're looking at the food group low GI, high fibre or cereal foods, if you're under option 1, you're allowed to have 5 units of breads and cereals a day. Whereas if you're in option 2, that can be up to 7 units. So again, it comes back down to having a look at what you prefer within your day, but keeping to the portions that you know are going to be beneficial for your health. Now the important one, number 7. Can anyone guess what that one is? Indulgences. It's important to recognise indulgences. We're all going to have them, so there's no hard fast rule say you never can have any of these indulgences. It's really just learning about where they fit in your diet. And it's really, truly looking at your dietary pattern on a week-to-week basis, not on a day-to-day basis. So we do suggest, monitoring yourself and how often you have your indulgences. And this does have a list in the book about what the indulgences are. So we know it's cake, chocolate, it's biscuits, it's wine, it's those lovely things. But in this meal plan, we've actually allowed for 4 indulgences across the week. Okay, and I'll go back into what that looks like in a moment. One thing that, oops, wrong button. Okay. One thing I go back and reflect on what we've done in the book. One thing I don't feel we did terribly well is to educate you on what those units are as far as carbohydrates are concerned. So when we're looking at the low breads and cereals, and you probably all know this now because you've been to these lovely ladies over here and all through your education sessions, that 1 unit of carbohydrate is 15 grams of carbohydrate. 1 unit of the breads and cereal group, 1 unit of fruit group, and also your low-fat dairy, explicitly your milk and your yogurt, contribute to those 15 grams of carbohydrate. So you can assume that 1 unit is equal to 15 grams of carbohydrate when you're reading this, and that's probably one of the key messages I want to get out today. When we're looking at indulgences, it has sugar, it has fat. We're not looking at indulgences as providing any key nutrient value apart from just enjoyment. So we ask you to read your labels around those. Everybody okay so far? Down the bottom? The second column down the bottom, the vegetables, number 5. Oh, except cheese. Except cheese. Don't forget these slides will be available too, so... Okay. Should have pressed that button, it would have expanded it for you. Just coming here, so now you've seen how they, our background of looking at the guidelines, looking at our research, bringing that down through to then explicitly looking at what was the energy pattern, what was the total pattern going to be. Once we decided what the pattern was going to be, then we assigned the units, and then from the units we looked at building the meal plan. And from building the meal plan, this is a sample of what that day is. I've just picked out one sample because there's a few in the book, but the one I picked out is the high protein option. And it's basically the 6,500 kilojoule plan, which is quite unique. Out of this plan, you can see I've added up the carbohydrates, and it's 105 grams of carbohydrates throughout the day. And I'll show you the most important thing is that when we were actually developing this, we'd actually put it in mind of, needing to have to couple that with your protein sources at key points, but also have an even distribution of your carbohydrates throughout the day, which is really important. And as Manny said, when looking back in the appetite area, we've looked at the three food groups, the three main meals, breakfast, lunch and dinner, but we have actually incorporated core foods and snacks that are part of that as well. So looking at breakfast, it's always good to, have your carbohydrates in the beginning of the day. That's a typical dietary pattern across most of Australians. We tend to eat more carbohydrates because we know we're going to move throughout the day, so that's where you want to probably have them in the beginning. So breakfast option 1 is really having about it's supposed to be 45 to 50 grams of carbohydrate there, and it's 3 to 4 serves of carbohydrate at that breakfast option. Coming down to lunch, it's around about 30 grams or 2 serves of carbohydrate, typically at that lunchtime. And then at dinner, we're looking at 15 grams of carbohydrate. So if you wanted to have that small 100-gram potato at dinner, you're actually okay to do that. Or using the units, you'll learn that if you don't want the potato but you want a half a cup of rice, cooked rice with it, or half a cup of cooked pasta, you can actually use the units to swap in and out what you feel you want at that meal time. It takes a while to get your momentum with this way of thinking, but it's about you being more flexible with your diet plan and actually being able to accommodate that flexibility as you want. So that's where the core carbohydrates come from, but looking at the snack options that are allowable as well. And these are your core food and snack options. There's 30 grams or 2 carb serves that you can place. Either you can have, for example, a 200-gram tub of yogurt. You can have that with your lunch if you want to, or it can be a mid-meal snack. It's completely up to you. The tea and coffee that you've had today, that's considered to be a free list, so that doesn't contribute to your overall energy balance within this meal plan. And then we've got 20 grams of raw unsalted nuts equals your 2 fat units, again contributing to your monounsaturated fats. Now I'm going to show you some visual cues, and I've just broken the breakfast, lunch and dinner down into a few slides. When I go through it, I just want you to think, you don't have to talk about it, but you just think to yourself, is that what I'm having now? Or is there something I can change and tweak? Because it's really about the composition of foods as well, not just having all carbohydrates. As Manny said, if you just have 2 cups of oats in the morning, oats are good in moderation, but if you were to reduce that and maybe put a bit of milk with it and maybe some fruit with it, then it's a better complete meal. So have a look at what you might be doing right and give yourself a pat on the back, but what you might be able to improve on as well. So this is what it would look like. The 40 grams of low GI, high soluble fibre, such as Guardian, Healthwise, the Goodness Superfoods variety are quite good as well. With 250 mils of milk. Now you might use that milk on the cereal and a dash in your coffee. That's completely fine. Or you might choose to have that milk as a yogurt exchange and put the yogurt there instead. That's completely fine. And then you can have a serve of 150 grams of fruit, such as the strawberries, and that can be chopped on top or it can be taken separately, completely up to where you want to have it. So that's equal to the 2 units of bread, or that's that 30 grams, so that's 2 serves of carbohydrate, 1 unit of dairy, again another serve of carbohydrate, and a serve of carbohydrate for your fruit. So carbohydrates are essential, it's just where they fit and how much in the day you're having. Having a look at lunch. This is your lovely quick and easy sandwich. A lot of people fear putting a sandwich together. What we work on is making sure when you're having a sandwich, you're having a good protein source with it. And again, like Manny suggested, it does slow down, help you control your appetite, but it also slows down gastric digestion and help your body cope with carbohydrates a little bit better as well. So in this one, you've got 2 slices of bread. We all know what that equals as far as carbohydrate serves. And then you're placed together with, say, 50 grams of your lean meat, fish, chicken, or 2 eggs at that time point. Now in here, this fat has been used 30 grams of avocado as a spread instead of margarine or butter, but you can have margarine, but just be a little bit less. And it also allows for the 20 grams of reduced fat cheese as well, or 10 grams of full fat cheese. So all the foods that you're all used to still can be having, it's just putting the portions together that's going to make a good nutritional composition that your body can cope better with. This one would most probably be the most difficult time of the day, is the dinner time. If you're working, you get home tired, or if you're out and about, you'll get home and think, what am I going to have for dinner? So this takes the most planning, I would think. So here it's simple, it's a Thai beef salad, but that can be a Thai beef stir fry if you wanted to, so meat and vegetables put in the stir fry. And instead of using the bread, you can use that half cup of rice as an accompaniment rather than being part of the main dish. And that's probably the big thing around the evening meal, is thinking differently about, is it a pasta dish or is it a pasta accompaniment? So this one is one of the recipes I've taken out, which is a cup of free-list vegetables. So free-list vegetables are the vegetables that don't contain starch and that you can use to top up if you get hungry, basically throughout the day as well, so you have more on your plate. And there is a tablespoon of light margarine. You can put that on the bread, or you can use it as a dressing in the salad, but making sure that you're aware of what that fat serve is as well, and going back to the units is important. Ooh, I got a whistle. Core food groups. So did you have a question? No. The core food snack groups. Now, this is in addition to those 3 meals, and how you use them is up to your lifestyle pattern, and that's probably one of the key parts to remember, because when we're thinking about dieting, we're thinking breakfast, lunch and dinner, no snacks, I'm going to be strong. It doesn't need to be that way. You basically need to think of, what do I do in a day? When do I need some snacks? What can I have? What's a healthy choice? So it's all about personalising this to your needs, not going, okay, I'm going on a generic plan here. So the core food snack options, such as your tea and coffee, I think I've had 2 today, so I'm good. 200 gram low-fat yogurt, so 1 unit of dairy can go, like I said before, it can go as your lunch, it can go as an afternoon tea. Have a look at the time of the day that you get your hunger and cravings. I know I'm still consulting as a dietitian in private practice as well, and I have this trend of people going, it's 3:30 or it's 8. 3:30 or it's 8, so try to have it around about 3:30. It's probably a good time, but again, look at your pattern, look at what you're experiencing. And that can be, it doesn't have to be 2 snacks. You can have your low-fat yogurt with your fruit as well. That's perfectly okay, and you can have that as a supper before 8 o'clock, which would be ideal. And then you can put some nuts on your muesli. So you still have those snacks. It doesn't have to be contained in a separate meal. It can be put into your main meals, or you can use them as snacks when you're feeling hungry. So how did you go? Are you self-assessing and self-monitoring here? Good. Now, this is always the fun part, sort of. What I just gone through then with your breakfast, lunch and dinner, and then also with your snacks, is part of the core food groups, okay? Then we now come into indulgences, and as Manny showed you on what traditionally Australians are eating, is about 40% of our foods are coming from this food group, so we're eating way too much. And whether that's something to do with desire, because we might be eating them every day, or whether it's because, we just get that bored, or, at the end of the day we just sit and watch TV and maybe have a bit of a nibble. It's about assessing where these fit for you. The indulgences a week in this meal plan are about 4 indulgence units per week. Each indulgence unit is equal to 450 kilojoules. Okay, so this is where label reading comes in, so you can understand your portion of what you can have and what you would consider indulgence. Now I'm showing you mine. My indulgence is a chocolate and a bit of red wine, and basically I'm allowed 1,800 kilojoules across the week. So for me, that's 2 standard drinks of the red wine and 40 grams of chocolate in that week is what I'm allowed. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're actually eating the core food, so you're topping up on the vegetables that we're commonly not eating, you feel greater, you feel more in control, you feel fuller, and you feel healthier, and you feel in more control of actually not having these on a regular basis. So that's what the changes are about, and it's about slow and steady changing your dietary patterns to come to more of a healthy lifestyle that you can to maintain. With the indulgences as well, we say 4 a week because you might have them all in one sitting, and you might be quite strong in going, okay, I'm only going out Friday night or Saturday night, I'm going to the fringe, and have those at that time, and work or other activities might distract you from that type of eating. So just think about when you might need them and when you might not need them, and work on your strong days of not having them, and then work on the days where you're socially around other people that are having them as well. That's good. I think diabetes is affecting my eyesight. I have trouble seeing the consequences of poor food choices. I think we all know what the possible consequences are of poor food choices. I don't probably need to go through that again. But it's, what we don't assess really is how hard it can be to make those good choices more sustainable. And it's about taking your time, step by step, making 1 or 2 changes a week. You don't have to do the all or nothing. It's making engaging with the team that's there to support you and just making those small changes across time. And then looking back, keeping a journal and monitoring yourself is always great. Even if you've got an iPhone, just take a photo of your food and you probably see your portions gradually decrease and you're in going down the right pathway. I've just got some nice pictures that are some of the type of recipes that are offered in the book as well that fit. So if you're getting to the evening meal planning and you're thinking, I'm not really creative, I need some ideas, that's where these comes in, and just taking some of those snapshots from the recipe book. I won't go too heavy into the science, but this is basically, why these patterns are quite good. The low carbohydrate diet plan, I think Manny spoke well about, the lower carbohydrate plan. Again, keep in mind this is a moderate carbohydrate plan. The lower carbohydrate plan might be yet to come. But what this does is actually reduce the carbohydrate, moderate the protein, but get you back to eating fats as well, monounsaturated fats, in the right amounts that you need. A lot of people, when they're thinking of diet and controlling, healthy eating, there's so much out there in the media about, cutting out fats. Fats are bad. Fats lower, as it says here, fat and protein modulate mechanisms that slow gastric emptying. That means it takes food longer to pass through the gastrointestinal system, and your body can cope better with the carbohydrates when you're doing that. So having meals which are a combination of protein, fats and carbohydrate are really important for managing diabetes. Diets that are high in monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fat, there was 2 studies here that have been shown to improve insulin sensitivity, blood lipid and flow-mediated dilation. So it helps with cardiac protection as well. So normally diabetes and cardiovascular disease are quite closely linked. Okay. And this is just a snapshot of what the typical meal plans look like in there, and generally they're structured day by day, but you don't have to have them day by day. You can choose a breakfast from one area or a lunch from another area and just go and have a dinner that you like. And that's perfectly fine. It just gives you guidelines that you can use to implement that in your day-to-day living. Now that green arrow, you might not be able to see what that says, but the recipe book, the uniqueness of this one actually, because a lot of people come to me and go, I don't know what to do with my veggies. You're asking me to have 5 serves and we're asking you to increase it on a population level. What do I do with my veggies? So what we've done in the book is highlight what is classified free veggies as well, so it makes it easier for you to say, okay, they're the ones I can have more of if I desire. If this meal is too small for me, I'll put more of those vegetables in as well. So what are the free list vegetables? Just a quick summation. This is not extensive by any way, shape or form, but non-starch vegetables really are your carrot, broccoli, tomato, cucumber, lettuce, so your salad vegetables. I should really say they're everything but your potato, corn and legumes right there. Your low energy drinks, which we forget about, keeping up your hydration is also important. So tea, coffee, water, diet cordial, diet soft drink, herbal teas and unflavoured mineral waters are also allocated within this plan. And boredom is only, set in what I've seen within the clinical trial studies more so, is when we get to a certain point, normally around about 6 to 8 weeks within the clinical trial, we get this boredom set in. And when you look at what the boredom is due to, it's not just about the meat and vegetables, it's about the flavours. And what I think we need to work on as well is building up flavours, the sensations of flavours that you can use within your meals, getting more the Thai flavours through your meals, or finding out what cuisine you like and mixing those flavours and spicing your meats that way as well can help overcome that diet fatigue or that change. That's my transition into mushrooms. Very subtle. So is everybody okay with the diet and lifestyle book, and I guess a little bit more clarity about how that healthy eating lifestyle plan can be integrated into your lifestyle? Is that a little bit... I've gone blank. You can purchase it pretty much everywhere. Like my stores have it. They've got it at Big W, Target, Kmart, around a range of places. Do you have it? Have it at the Diabetes Association as well. I'm going to go into one of my favourite foods. Again, being a dietitian, I'm a bit of a mushroom nerd. Mushrooms and health, I guess they're becoming a little bit more well known about the power of mushrooms and their nutrient benefits. So I just hope to give you a bit of an overview of how great they are, and hopefully get you to have at least 3 a day, and maybe leaving in the sun for a bit of sun tanning as well. It might be useful. So this component really was going to talk about, I guess with CSIRO, what we've been involved in since about 2008 is the Mushroom Health Review, which is with the Mushroom Growers Association as well here in Australia. One of my roles was to look at nutrient profiling of mushrooms and look at the uniqueness. I guess what nutrient profiling of a food is looking at what that food offers as a unique element of that food. And just I'll go through what we did find as well. So there's a great team of people on this report. And we'll look a bit about mushrooms and immune function and weight management as well. This is what the report looks like. It's a lot of data, it's very scientific, but a snapshot, it's the 4th review that we've done. There's about 11,000 published papers that we've been put together as a systematic process of getting the information out there. Nutrient profile, basically when we're looking at mushrooms, we're not just looking at what we've got in our own backyard, we're looking across a whole range of databases internationally, and there's quite a range of mushrooms that were analysed or popped into the database, and we're looking at now over 100 different types of mushrooms. The common mushroom that you know, the button mushroom, which is the Agaricus bisporus, is the one we all know. But there are about 100, and if not, there's more still out there that are being popped in that we need to look at. So now we're looking at about 103 mushroom species, to be honest. So what did we find? I guess we assessed 12 nutrient databases worldwide and then pulled all that data into a couple of tables. We classified the mushrooms as common raw, basically what you get at your normal supermarket or your market tours that they commonly have. I know there's a market tour coming up sometime, so maybe grill the food stall holders of what type of mushrooms that they've got. Then we looked at cooked and canned and also dried mushrooms that you can see in the markets now as well. Here in Australia, the most common, like I said, is the white button mushroom, which is the most widely cultivated, and that was our target. The next most important commercial species are the shiitake, which are becoming more common now, straw mushroom, oyster mushrooms, and the enoki mushroom. So when we looked at the common profile of the mushroom, it was quite interesting that we found that, mushrooms are quite, unique in protein. They're higher than I expected them to be per 100 grams, to be about 3.3 grams of protein. And the energy was quite low, so it was only about, for 100 grams, which is quite a nice size, it was only about 24 calories or 103 kilojoules in that serve, so nice and quite nice. Quite often most people think mushroom is another meat, and I'll get to why they think that, but it doesn't replace your iron, it doesn't replace your B12, but it does have some unique flavours and satiety properties that meat also has. This probably isn't very interesting to you, but the protein digestibility of the mushroom was quite high. And that's a method of looking at the quality of protein within food. So we know with high quality protein foods you get better outcomes for appetite and satiety. And so mushrooms were quite high. Again, sorry, data nerd here, but there's a little bit more table here just saying that, mushrooms do have a high range of other nutrients, not just the protein or fibre and being low energy. They actually contribute a lot to other elements of your diet as well. So mushrooms in B12 was one of the unique findings. It has been controversial because most people think that it provides you a lot of B12, and it's not so much the mushroom, it's more so the enriched compost that's actually coming through the cultivation of that mushroom that's giving you the B12. So looking at where you're getting that from. Mushrooms and vitamin D, that's probably the most topical area for mushrooms. It is important. It's important. Vitamin D is important for so many different things, and it's commonly thought that you get that from being in the sun for about 10 minutes of the day, and you know, exposing a little bit of your skin. That is correct, but you can actually expose the skin of the mushroom as well, and that can also increase the vitamin D level of that mushroom, which is fantastic, and that's what we're also trying to promote as well, that, you know, mushrooms are a good source of vitamin D, but they're a better source if you put them out in the sun for about 60 minutes a day, and you can get up to close to 100% of the RDI for vitamin D, or what your body requires on a day for vitamin D. And when you look at 100 grams, that's about 3 to 4 mushrooms. Yep, I'll get the nods. So 3 to 4 mushrooms, cutting them up into salads or just having them in a dish. You can even have them at breakfast as grilled. Quite easy to get into your diet. When you're looking at how much vitamin D you can get in mushrooms, basically the equal amount of food you'll have to eat from other vitamin D sources, such as your fatty fish. So here is about 500 grams of fatty fish. And as Manny pointed out before, that can be quite an expensive way of actually getting your vitamin D in. Or you have to have 500 mils of vitamin D enriched milk a day. So milk that's been had on the label added vitamin D. And again, anything that's been fortified sometimes adds a price to the product that you're buying. So it's a bit of a no-brainer that it's easier and cheaper to get mushrooms into your diet. And even if you leave them out in the sun while you're preparing something else, go back and get them and put them in a salad, can actually enrich your vitamin D intake as well. I'll get a little bit technical here, but I won't go too hard into it. But mushrooms have been found to be beneficial in immune function and cancer. So some of the research has said it's most promising. It's not categorically that it's the sole nutrient that's going to help, but it has got some promise and benefit behind there, especially on immune function and breast cancer. It's more notably the beta-glucans that are found in the mushrooms that have been shown to have some promise. And it's really about the structure and function between the beta-glucans that are most important for their, you know, inflammation and immune response. Okay. Additional with the mushroom and immune function, they have shown that the antioxidant selenium, and I'm going to try and pronounce ergothioneine. Sounds right. Potent antioxidants that are also found in the mushrooms, so they're also beneficial. And if you know what antioxidants are, they're actually the ones that decrease the risk of that free radical or the oxidation of some of the effects of foods, especially if you're burning your oils. With mushrooms and diabetes, it looks like it might be one of the future things that we need to look at. It's shown that beta-glucans have a hypoglycemic effect via a direct interaction with insulin receptors on target tissues, but this was an animal study and there's probably need to be confirmed during human trials. An RCT placebo-controlled trial of around 72 showed that the mushroom supplementation, so a mushroom compound, in combination with metformin and glycoside, improved insulin resistance in these subjects as well. In these subjects by that study. The clinical investigation in diabetic patients, and this was 89, has shown that oyster mushrooms consumption significantly reduced blood pressure, so it's not, and plasma glucose and cholesterol and triglycerides. So they have an overall benefit of health, but again, it's at the early stages and we need some more research into that. So again, a nice plug for putting your name down. So what else did we learn? I mean, it's not just about mushrooms. There's a lot of things about mushroom extracts as well. Can have an anti-tumour effect, benefits for the immune system, antimicrobial properties, and oxidant activities. But again, it's around the research that we need to improve our knowledge here. My favourite is around the taste of mushrooms. Have you all had a bit of a taste of the mushrooms today? What did you think? Yeah. It's not bad. Did you get that like a tangy, like meaty flavour and a meaty taste with it? That's the umami taste, and it's more the glutamate that's found in mushrooms that is quite novel about mushrooms, and that's where it could be the texture and the taste of the mushrooms can actually, you know, give you that feeling like you're having a piece of meat. It also can make you feel fuller for longer as well, and there's some studies that I'll just talk about briefly that have shown that effect. Okay. Okay, there we go. One of the other things is when you're cooking with mushrooms, I'm sure Pamela would be able to say this a bit more eloquently than I, is when you're actually, the glutamates can actually give you that saltiness. So quite often when you're cooking with mushrooms, you don't need to add salt to your dishes. So if you know you're adding salt, just adding some mushrooms can change the taste of that dish as well and give it a bit more of a flavour enhancer. This one is about mushroom and weight management, and a study by Cheskin found that by substituting mushrooms for beef at a test lunch between normal and overweight and obese adults, shown that the volume of meals didn't change. The energy restriction was quite novel. The mushroom meal was actually obviously a lot lower than the meat dish, but they didn't compensate, or they didn't. Participants didn't compensate for lower energy intake by eating more later in the day, so they didn't get hungrier later in the day. Now, that's not taken away from the importance of the protein within a diet. That has its own benefits. This is just an addition to that, so if you wanted to combine your meat dish with some extra mushrooms or have a salad dish as a in-between meal, that's perfectly fine. So it does highlight the benefits of mushroom if you're looking at weight management as well. I must have talked fast. I'm at the end already. So concluding summary really about mushrooms is that it's a valuable source of all nutrients. It's great to include. It's easy to get your dose of mushrooms in, and it's easy to actually leave them out for about an hour in the sun. It doesn't change appearance or taste of the mushroom if it's left out for that bit of time. You probably wouldn't want to leave it out at 42-degree heat day in open weather. It might shrivel. But I was most surprised by the diversity of the effects of mushrooms and the impact of health and where it can go in the future. So with that, I'll leave you there. Thank you. That's probably difficult to answer because it's got to be the whole meal. I mean, when you're cooking mushrooms as well, and like, you know, with cooking any vegetables or fruit that's high in potassium, if you're cooking it and you're boiling it in water or cooking it, just not having the sauce that goes with it would be ideal. So canned mushrooms wouldn't be the best option, so fresh would definitely be the way to go. I would say you probably still would be able to have 100 grams quite easily, so the 3 mushrooms a day would be quite safe to have. When we were looking at, I guess, putting them into their classifications, whether it's raw, we found that there's a higher concentration of the dried varieties in vitamin D, so they are quite, you know, they are quite okay. But no, not really. They're quite, the common mushroom would probably be the way to go. Yeah.